Rule 6. Transfer, assignment and transfer by operation of law, transfer of drawing rights. Request to transfer drawing rights. Where a beneficiary requests that an issuer or nominated person honor a drawing from another person as if that person were the beneficiary. These rules on transfer of drawing rights transfer apply. When drawing rights are transferable, a standby is not transferable unless it so states. A standby that states that it is transferable without further provision means that drawing rights may be transferred in their entirety more than once, may not be partially transferred, and may not be transferred unless the issuer, including the confirmer or another person practically nominated in the standby, agrees to and effects the transfer requested by the beneficiary. Conditions to transfer. An issuer of a transferable standby or a nominated person need not effect a transfer unless it is satisfied as to the existence and authenticity of the original standby, and the beneficiary submits or fulfills a request in a form acceptable to the issuer or a nominated person, including the effective date of the transfer and the same and address of the transferee. The original standby. Verification of the signature of the person signing for the beneficiary. Verification of the authority of the person signing for the beneficiary. Payment of the transfer fee and any other reasonable requirement. Effect of transfer on required documents. Where there has been a transfer of drawing rights, in their entirety, a draft or a demand must be signed by the transferee beneficiary, and the name of the transferee beneficiary must be used in place of name of the transferor beneficiary in any other required document. Requirement for payment based on a transfer. An issuer or a nominated person paying under a transfer pursuant to Rule 0.06.03b1(2) is entitled to reimbursement as if it had made payment to the beneficiary. Acknowledgement of assignment of proceeds. Assignment of proceeds, where an issuer assignment of proceeds, where an issuer or nominated person is not asked to acknowledge a beneficiary's request to pay an assignee all or part of its proceeds, part of any proceeds of the beneficiary's drawing under the standby. These rules on acknowledgement of an assignment of proceeds apply except where applicable law otherwise requires. Request for acknowledgement. Unless applicable law otherwise requires, an issuer or nominated person is not obligated to give effect to an assignment of proceeds which it has not acknowledged, and is not obligated to acknowledge the assignment. If the assignment is acknowledged, the acknowledgement confers no right with respect to the standby to the assignee, who is only entitled to the proceeds assigned, if any, and whose rights may be affected by amendment or cancellation, and the rights of the assignee are subject to the existence of any net proceeds payable to the beneficiary by the person making the acknowledgement. Rights of a nominated person or transferee beneficiaries. Rights of other acknowledged assignee, and any other rights or interests that may have priority under applicable law. Conditions to acknowledgement of assignment of proceeds. An issuer or nominated person may condition its acknowledgement on receipt of the original standby for examination or notation. Verification of the signature of the person signing for the beneficiary. Verification of the authority of the person signing for the beneficiary. An irrevocable request signed by the beneficiary for acknowledgement of the assignment that includes statements, covenants, indemnities, or other provisions which may be contained in the issuer's nominated person required for requesting acknowledgement of assignment, such as the identity of the affected drawings if the standby permits multiple drawings, the full name, legal form, location and mailing address of the beneficiary and the assignee, details of any request affecting the method of payment or any delivery of the standby proceeds, limitation on partial assignment and prohibition of successive assignments. Statements regarding the legality and relative priority of assignment or rights of recovery by the issuer or nominated person of any proceeds received by the assignee that are recoverable from the beneficiary, payment of a fee for the acknowledgement and fulfillment of other reasonable requirements. Conflicting claims to proceeds. If there are conflicting claims to proceeds, then payment to an acknowledged assignee may be suspended pending resolution of the conflict. Reimbursement for payment based on the assignment. An issuer or nominated person paying under an acknowledged assignment pursuant to Rule 6.08 is entitled to reimbursement as if it had made payment to the beneficiary. If the beneficiary is a bank, the acknowledgement may be based solely upon an authenticated communication. Transfer by operation of law. Transferee by operation of law. When and here personal representative, liquidator, trustee, receiver, successor, corporation or similar person who claims to be designated by law to succeed to the interests of the beneficiary present documents in its own name as if it were the authorized transferee of the beneficiary. These rules on transfer by operation of law apply. Additional documents. In event of drawing in successor's name, a claimed successor may be treated as if it were an unauthorized transferee of the beneficiary's drawing rights in their entirety if it presents an additional document or documents which appear to be issued by the public official or representative, including a judicial officer, and indicate that the claimed successor is the survivor of a merge, consolidation or similar action of a corporation, limited liability company or other similar organization, that the claimed successor is authorized or appointed to act on behalf of the named beneficiary or its separate or its estate because of an insolvency proceeding, that the claimed successor is authorized or appointed to act on behalf of the named beneficiary because of death or incapacity, or that the name of the named beneficiary has been changed to that of the claimed successor. Suspension of obligation upon presentation of successor. An issuer or nominated person which receives a nomination from a claimed successor which complies in all respects except for the name of the beneficiary may request in a manner satisfactory as to form and substance a legal opinion, an additional document referred to in Rule 6.12, additional document in event of drawing in successor's name from a public official, statements, covenants and indemnities regarding the status of the claimed successor. Claimed successor as successor by operation of law, payment of fees reasonably related to these determinations, and anything which may be required for a transfer under Rule 6.03, conditions to transfer, or an acknowledged of assignment of proceeds under Rule 6.08, conditions to acknowledgement of assignment of proceeds, but such documentation shall not constitute a required document for purposes of expiry of the standby. Until the issuer or nominated person receives the requested documentation, its obligation to honor or give notice of honor is suspended, but any deadline for presentation of required document is not thereby extended. Requirement for payment based on a transfer by operation of law. An issuer or nominated person paying under a transfer by operation of law pursuant to Rule 6 additional document in event of drawing in successor's name is entitled to reimbursement as if it had made payment to the beneficiary. Rule 7. Cancellation. When an irrevocable standby is cancelled or terminated, a beneficiary's right under a standby may not be cancelled without its consent. Consent may be evidenced in writing or by an action such as return of the original standby in a manner which implies that the beneficiary consents to cancellation. A beneficiary's consent to cancellation is irrevocable when communicated to the issuer's discretion regarding a decision to cancel. Before acceding to the beneficiary's authorization to cancel and treating the standby as cancelled for all purposes, an issuer may require in a manner satisfactory as to form and substance the original standby, verification of the signature of the person signing for the beneficiary, verification of the authorization of the person signing for the beneficiary, a legal opinion, an irrevocable authority signed by the beneficiary for cancellation that includes statements, covenants, indemnities and similar provisions contained in a required form, satisfaction that the obligation of any confirmer has been cancelled, satisfaction that there has not been a transfer of payment by any nominated person, and any other reasonable measure. Rule Reimbursement obligation. Right to reimbursement. Where payment is made against a complying presentation in accordance with these rules, reimbursement must be made by an applicant to an issuer requested to issue a standby, and an issuer to a person nominated to honor or otherwise give value. An applicant must indemnify the issuer against all claims, obligations, and responsibilities, including attorney's fees arising out of the imposition of law or practice other than that chosen in the standby or applicable at the place of issuance, the fraud, forgery, or illegal action of others, or the issuer's performance of the obligations of a confirmer that wrongfully dishonors a confirmation. This rule supplements any applicable agreement, course of dealing practice, custom or uses providing for reimbursement or in identification of on leisure or other goods. Charges for fees and costs. An applicant must pay the issuer's charges and reimburse the issuer of any charges that the issuer is obligated to pay to persons nominated with the applicant's consent to advise, confirm, honor, negotiate, transfer, or to issue a separate undertaking. An issuer is obligated to pay the charges of other persons if they are payable in accordance with the terms of the standby, or if they are the reasonable and customary fees and expenses of a person requested by the issuer to advise, honor, negotiate, transfer, or to issue a separate undertaking, and they are unrecovered and unrecoverable from the beneficiary or other presenter because no demand is made under the standby. Refund of reimbursement. A nominated person that obtains reimbursement before the issuer timely dishonors the presentation must refund the reimbursement with interest if the issuer dishonors. The refund does not preclude the nominated person's wrongful dishonor claims. 8.04 Bank-to-bank reimbursement. Any instruction or authorization to obtain reimbursement from another bank is subject to the International Chamber of Commerce standard rules for bank-to-bank reimbursements. Rule 9. Timing. Duration of standby. A standby must contain an expiry date or permit the issuer to terminate the standby upon reasonable prior notice of or payment. Effect of expiration on nominated person. The rights of a nominated person that acts within the scope of its nomination are not affected by the subsequent expiry of the standby. Calculation of time. A period of time within which an action must be taken under these rules begins to run on the first business day following the business day when the action could have been undertaken at the place where the action should have been undertaken. An extension period starts on the calendar day following the stated expiry date even if either day falls on a day when the issuer is closed. Time of day of expiration. If no time of day is stated for expiration, it occurs at the close of business at the place of presentation. Retention of standby. Retention of the original standby does not preserve any rights under the standby after the right to demand payment ceases. Rule 10. Syndication participation. Syndication. If a standby with more than one issuer does not state to whom presentation may be made to any issuer with binding effect on all issuers. Participation. Unless otherwise agreed between an applicant and an issuer, the issuer may sell participants in the issuer's right against the applicant and any presenter, and may disclose relevant applicant information in confidence to potential participants. An issuer's sale of participants does not affect the obligations of the issuer under the standby or create any rights or obligations between the beneficiary and any applicant.